What is the creepiest thing that's happened to you personally that made you question reality? Only mildly creepy but definitely made me question reality. Me and a friend were sitting about in my room playing video games etc when out of nowhere there was this insanely loud pop. My ears were ringing, it was so loud. We both instantly looked at each other thinking one of us had caused it, but neither of us have a clue what happened. It sounded as though it came from thin air in the middle of the room. I have a lot of really weird experiences in my life that made me question reality, but this is my most recent weirdness. My mother died a year and a half ago. My stepdad couldn't handle it, so he packed up and left their house. He let the mortgage company take it back and it has sat empty since she passed. The house is on a hill and they have a huge barn in the field below the house an acre away. A few weeks ago my sister, who lives down the road from the house, called me and tells me the lights were on in mom's bedroom and all the barn lights were on. Hours pass and her husband decided to go up the hill to the house. He walks in the door and walked to the light switch to shut off the lights to the barn. He switched the barn lights off and all the lights went off. The inside and outside lights just shut off at the same time. He freaked a little bit and switched it back on, but there was nothing. No lights, no power, no anything. He turns around and leaves as fast as he could. The power had been off for over a year at that point. We assumed the mortgage company had turned on the power at first, but they haven't. The service is still off. There were probably 12 lights running on that phantom power. In our culture, when your loved ones come to you in your dreams and tell you they are hungry, you're supposed to go and leave some food and water by their grave and tell them it's for them. We believe that in afterlife you can still be hungry or not have money to pay your way, so we also burn special paper money. Had a dream where my boss hurt his back and he couldn't work that day. He came out with his shirt off and informed me that I would still be working that day. He was a slave driver, so that didn't surprise me. I wake up from the dream and head to work. A buddy picks me up and we drive to his house. I told my buddy about the dream and we both laughed, knowing my boss would probably do that. I knock on the door and no one comes. But I heard the garage door open, so I walked over to see if he was in there. He opens the door with no shirt on and the exact same conversation I had in my dream unfolds in front of me, word for word, and no one would have even believed me had I not told my buddy a moment earlier. I always remember this and do not have an explanation for it. When I was about 4 or 5 years old, I remember waking up in the middle of the night and walking to the stairs. I remember closing my eyes for a second at the top of the stairs, and when I opened them I would be at the bottom of the stairs. I would run upstairs and close my eyes and the same thing would happen again. It happened at least 4 or 5 times until my parents called me to go to bed because they could hear me run up the steps. It's weird because I was wide awake and do not have a history with sleepwalking. I still think about it and wonder how that was possible. At least 6 times in my life I've gone home. I know I locked the door, but when I'm about to put my key in, the door opens like someone was expecting me but no one's there. It's happened at my mom's house, my house, and other PPLS houses. I was helping my buddy move into his new house, and when we came back with more stuff I had to pee, so I ran to the front door and it opened. When he came in he said he locked it before we left. Don't know what it is, but maybe it's a superpower. Lazy telekinesis. Nice. I am at A in our college's anatomy class, which takes place in the cadaver lab. Dead bodies. Late one night, I am working alone in the cadaver lab and I start to hear a noise. It's hard to tell what the noise sounds like, but it's a consistent muffled noise. So I kind of walk around the room and locate it. Now normally the bodies are all kept in these big metal crates, but at the time we had one more body than we did crate. So one body was in a plastic body bag and that's where the noise was coming from. So I am terrified at this point, all alone in the lab, looking down at this plastic body bag that I can see the outline of the body that presumably is coming back to life because it is definitely making noise. I stood over this body for a solid minute, debating whether I should open the bag, and finally the noise just stops. I got all my stuff together and bolted from the lab. A couple weeks later, the professor tells me to be careful if I ever work on that body because there is a live pacemaker in it, so don't cut into that, and it will vibrate and ring every few hours if it's low on battery. I let out the biggest sigh of relief that we weren't haunted. Sleep paralysis. A few years ago, I was dreaming I was talking to a friend of mine. So far, nothing weird. But then, For some reason, I realized that I was in a dream and the person I was talking with technically wasn't my friend. Suddenly, their appearance turned to black and I felt them pushing me down and holding me down in my bed. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. At this point my cat woke up and jumped on me as if to protect me. Then, the dark silhouette or whatever that thing was vanished and I woke up. I swear I had red marks my shoulders where that thing was holding me down in my dream. Almost the exact same thing happened to me, except I was face down in my bed and nothing woke me up except time. Yikes. It's horrible. It feels like you're about to die or dragged into heck or something. Okay, this was recently and it still freaks me out. I was playing VR chat with my HTC Vice. I was sitting in my chair and just talking with friends when I all of a sudden heard something fall down or like someone tripped over something. Just some rumbling noise. I got confused because I was alone at home, so I lifted up my VR glasses and looked around in my room. I thought maybe something just simply fall down, but I couldn't find anything that looked different. And then all of a sudden I saw a chocolate bar wrapping on the floor. Perfectly neatly placed right in front of me and with the font even facing to me. Obviously I got confused and picked it up and looked at it. So the chocolate was missing. It was just the wrapping. But the problem is, I never bought this chocolate. Nor did I eat it, nor did I ever even had this kind of chocolate. It was normal chocolate with nuts and grapes and I'm not keen on those. And all it said was just laying there. I never found out how it got there and I never found out what the noise was I heard. I am still so confused and almost a bit scared by it. Normal chocolate with nuts and grapes. What in the goddamn frick? I had a dream twice. In this dream I was on the most beautiful island surrounded by the most beautiful emerald sea. I woke on one of those long chairs near the beach and was approached by an old jolly man that told me, "Everything is okay, we just have some traffic." That in a couple of minutes I was going to be back home. That I enjoyed myself. Meanwhile, the island had other people. Everyone relaxed. I made small chat with some guy, and he asked me where I was from. I told him the name of the city I live in. He replied to me that he had never heard about it, and he also named his own city something like Sector R61. That was weird, but in this island I was unable to freak out, or get mad or anything. I was relaxed all the time, so I know nothing of it. Also, he didn't look 100% human. Eventually the old man returned and told me that everything was solved now and that I was ready to go back. The next thing I knew is that I was awake in my bedroom at 7 AM exactly, completely relaxed and felt in top condition. Sounds like someone or something messed up while you were dreaming, so they put you into an interdimensional vacation until they could place you back into your reality. Haha. My wife and I had a 2-hour drive back from St. Louis to our home, during which both of us lost time. Woke up 3 hours later, still an hour and a half away from home, only having used enough gas to go that half hour, and our GPS showed we had been driving our normal route. We still have no freaking idea what happened, but we know we hadn't pulled over and that neither of us had any memory between taking an exit and seeing this ONW particular billboard for a restaurant we always pass. Still freaks me the frick out. Freaking auditory hallucinations. Frick those. Was driving down a rural really dark road at night. I am super sleep deprived. Drunk several of those 240mg caffeine Monster energy drinks. I didn't have the radio on, so it was pretty quiet. Then the whispering started. I'm confused, don't understand what it is. Try to focus on it. Is my stereo not all the way off? Then it started mumbling louder. Frick, this ain't good. Then I hear a very clear turn here, but my GPS says continue for 12 miles. Hahaha, frick that. Nope, frick that. I turn radio on really loud and continue home. Next physical I mention it to Doc. Am I insane? Both sleep deprivation and caffeine have been known to induce auditory hallucinations individually. Combining both, it's perfectly normal to hear things. If it happens again, come back in. Thought I was going mental. That or you narrowly avoided being ghost murdered. I had a terrible dream when I was 10 and I called my mom to come lay with me and we passed out, I guess. I woke up staring at the back of head. Her hair looked exactly like Michael Myers. I said mom, she turned around and it was her, but holy crap, I'll never forget. Groovy baby. There was an old man who lived on the road I drove every day to get to the highway. He sat on his front porch drinking his morning coffee, and he always waved at me when I drove by and I always waved back. This went on for the better part of a decade. One day I was taking to my neighbor about how much Mr. So-and-so waving made my morning awesome and I was glad he was still kicking around. My neighbor says, wait, what? He has been dead for 3 years. Never saw him again. Who was I waving at? Dead Tennessee man's brother found posing as him and freaking out local commuters. One morning I woke up to my alarm going off at 6:30 as usual and got up and cooked breakfast. As soon as I sat down to eat, my alarm went off again and I woke up in bed. I dreamed that I woke up and went about my morning routine. That was easily the most disorienting thing I've ever experienced. I do this way more often than I'd like. Happens if I'm overly tired or stressed. I feel defeated every time I wake up a second time to realize I am not dressed or ready to go to work at all and have to go through the whole process again. I used to live out in the country. My house was in the middle of 4 large fields that usually grew corn. We had a large bay window facing out towards the nearest neighbor, over the field with a row of short bushes in front of it. One night I'm sitting alone watching TV beside this window. Mom is out smoking and my sister was in her room. The window is cracked open a bit so I can occasionally hear rustling of birds and such in the bushes. Window is open for airflow, not just to listen to birds. All of a sudden all noise stops and a small, frail voice comes from outside the window. Help me. I freeze. Still no noise outside after the voice. Nothing else was said that I could hear and I didn't move until my mom came back in. I asked if she heard anything which she replies no with a confused look. I didn't bother to tell her about what I heard because I didn't want to sound crazy, but that day will always stick with me. Woke up to my granddad stood by the door staring at me. Scared the crap out of me and there was a flash and he was gone. He's been dead about 7 or 8 years at that point. I asked my mum, she said yeah, he often did that. He'd wake my nan up for work by knocking on the window. Mum, dead grandpa stared at me through my door today. Yeah, he does that. I once took a nap at my boyfriend's house and fell into a deep sleep. His best friend died 2 years ago. We'll call him Jay, and I never got the chance to meet him. I only know stories that my boyfriend tells me. I began dreaming. I dreamt I woke up from my nap and walked around the house to find my boyfriend. I kept running into people I know and each time I would say, I am sleeping right now. I need to wake up, for about 2 hours. I walked around trying to convince everyone this wasn't reality and that this was actually a dream. Then I met Jay. He was in the dream, but he wasn't. I could tell he was the only other real entity and everything else was part of the dream. I said, hello, I'm so and so. He said, I know. And then I said, so you're Jay? And he nodded. At that moment we both knew we were meeting for the first time. We just looked at each other and knew. Then I woke up. I told my boyfriend, I think I just met Jay, and described the dream. He then explained to me that Jay was really into lucid dreaming and would study it and try to train himself to lucid dream, or take acid shrooms and try to dream. The whole experience was really crazy, but I'm convinced I was in a different dimension and met his deceased best friend. My friend was about to clean his gun and it was pointed directly at me when it went off. For a few seconds we stood there in shock, him thinking he killed me and me in a state of pure panic. Afterwards we found the bullet embedded in a wall beside me. I will never let him live that crap down. I was sitting in my room, just doing stuff on my computer when I suddenly heard a loud explosion. I swear the floor and windows were vibrating too. It scared the living crap out of me. The weird thing, however, my cat didn't really react to it. She kinda looked around, but didn't seem scared. She normally is terrified of loud sounds. I asked my mom downstairs and she had not noticed anything either. It still confuses me to this day. I would have chalked this up as a dream, except I know I was awake because I really had to pee. I woke up in the middle of the night, having to pee really bad as mentioned above, and from my position on the top bunk I could see into the hallway. The bathroom was right across the hall from my bedroom door and also right in my vision. I was just starting move to climb down and go to bathroom when I heard and felt the footsteps of a man coming down the hall and going into the bathroom. I thought it must be my dad, but that was strange because he and my mom had their own bathroom. Even stranger, he didn't turn on the light or close the door. So after a while I got annoyed because I really had to go, and I called out to him. No answer. So I finally climbed down and switch on the light, and find an empty bathroom. I had definitely seen a figure, heard the footsteps, and felt the vibrations of the footsteps of a large man come down the hall and go in there. I was about 10 when this happened, but I remember it so vividly because that is freakiest thing that's ever happened to me, paranormally speaking. You probably were just mildly awake, not fully. Sleep is weird sometimes. It's possible to dream while you're still kind of awake. You probably just experienced some auditory hallucinations. When I was just old enough to not need a childminder after school, I was home alone one summer's day. My parents, who would not be back until later, made me promise to lock the door and not answer the door to strangers. I did this religiously, as I was also anxious about being in the house by myself. There was a hefty bolt on our front door, and I was to make sure I used it. I would see my folks come home and know to unlock it, so I'm in the house, playing with Lego upstairs. I hear the unmistakable sound of the front door open and close. I even felt the percussive thud that was so familiar as the door closed. Thinking one of my parents must have come home early, I went down to greet them. No one there. I then saw the bolt was still across. Now my blood runs cold as I start racing through the possibilities to explain this. I check all doors and windows in panic. All locked. It was a standard 4-bedroom family house, not a mansion. Easily checked. I am alone in the house. So how the frick is the bolt across? Impossible to open that door from the outside. Key or no key? I'm sure it was the door I heard. The house was silent and it was a very loud and distinctive noise. It did not compute. I noped out of there fast and went to a friend's house. He did not believe me and was certain I was winding him up. Once woke up to the sound of heavy breathing and felt as if I was being watched. I couldn't move for a while either. Then I just blurted out my dog's name and kept calling for him. He didn't run over, and as soon as I could get myself to move I went looking for him. Found him sitting in the kitchen doorway, just staring straight forward. I started calling him from right behind him and he wouldn't even turn around. Then I touched his back and he turned to glance at me, but went right back to his trance. A year or so after the fact, I found out that the first thing was probably sleep paralysis. Not too sure about what was going on with the dog though. That's exactly what happened to my dog. 2/3 of my siblings went to dad's house and I stayed behind with my oldest brother. He was about to go to sleep when he sees the dog blankly staring at the corner of my sister's empty bunk bed. He called the dog several times but he didn't answer. Super creepy, man. I'll preface this by saying I don't buy into the whole ghosts or spirits thing, but when I think back to this, it still freaks me out. I wasn't really tired but I had work the next morning, so I lay down and closed my eyes. Not 2 seconds later I heard someone whisper my name in my ear very clearly. I was so freaked out I wouldn't dare open my eyes because I didn't want to see anything. I rolled over and pulled the covers over my head, falling asleep eventually. I don't live with anyone else and I'm out in the country. I've had this happen too, where I hear someone say or whisper my name when I'm totally alone. I even posted it here before and someone said it's common to hear things like that before you're completely asleep, even when you think you're fully awake. One night I was on Stephen Hawking's Wikipedia page and I thought to myself, dang, he looks a lot worse. What if he died tonight? Next morning I wake up to Stephen Hawking dead. You killed the old bastard. I spent 3 weeks in a coma, but didn't realize it. To me it seemed like many years had passed and I remember everything I did while in a coma. Woke up to realize that all those years weren't real. Been struggling with reality ever since. I've told this before, but when I was in college, my friends group was rather big, 10 or so of us. And we always went to lunch together at the cafeteria across campus every day. Outside of the atrium which we had to go through to get the cafeteria, there are bushes running alongside the pathway, so we're walking to lunch in groups of 2. There were 4 or 5 in the first group and 4 of us, including me, in the trailing group. The first group walks between the bushes and keeps going, but as soon as my group walks between the bushes we all kinda just stop. The most uneasy feeling just freaking washes into me and I'm a bit disoriented. The other guys felt it too. Then it kinda hits us all at once that someone is missing. but we can't remember who or anything about them. We do a count and we're all there, but we all are swearing there was one more person that's now just gone. We catch up to the first group and ask them and they have no idea what we're talking about. It's one of the weirdest things to ever happen to me. I believe in the supernatural, but I take an incredibly skeptic view to it, but I can't explain that. Also, in that same area, a lamppost just appeared overnight one time. No one in the group could remember it being there and we walked that way every single day. The group I was with when whoever it was disappeared took the long way around from then on out. I avoided that area like the plague. The Matrix deleted one of your friends. When I was 19, I worked third shift and was a little paranoid. I would take different routes to and from work, just in case. One night, as I was driving to work, I saw what was the stereotypical death. Black hood, no face, scythe. It was just standing in a field, leaning on the scythe and watched me go by. I freaked. Once I got to work, I called my best friend and told him. That way, if I died, someone would know. Work went fine that night. I forgot it after a few nights. A week or so later, it was the same route on rotation, but to go home, instead of going to work, I was involved in a head-on collision that temporarily killed me. I woke up a week later with extra parts and a lot of damage. My best friend asked me what route I had taken home and I lost it because it was the route I had seen death on before. I didn't really realize what it was when it was happening, but I had an out-of-body experience when I was about 8-9 years old. I was outside of the house I grew up in with my younger cousin and we were riding our bikes up and down our driveway. I stopped at one point and sat down in the middle of the driveway to take a break and watch my cousin. All of a sudden I remember getting this feeling as though I was watching myself from a distance. I knew I was sitting in the driveway, but it felt like I was watching a replica of myself sitting in the driveway, as if I was floating a few feet in front of me watching what was going on, as if I was a ghost watching my living self. Living. I described it once to a friend a few years ago, and she didn't entirely believe me. It's hard to describe, and the experience only lasted maybe a minute at the most, but even as young as I was, I remember thinking the whole thing was incredibly weird. It has not happened since then either, but I almost wish it would. Moved into a house that is almost 100 years old, and after about a year of living there one day I was sitting alone painting some figurines when Alexa blurts out, "Yes, Diana." It is Jimmy's favorite song and then proceeds to play Beethoven's Fifth Symphony. Diana is the name of the lady who previously owned the house and has been dead for about 5 years. Jimmy was her cello playing husband who, after Diana died, moved into a senior assisted living community. Premonitive dreams, mostly as a child, growing fewer and further between, until they stopped in my early 20s. The last I had was dreaming about the death of someone I cared very dearly about. A day later they drowned. That one affected me so badly that I think something simply switched off in my brain, and I no longer have premonitive dreams. I do, however, trust my intuition a lot in various circumstances. This is more weird than creepy in my opinion, but for me it was a very specific precognitive dream I had when I was in the 10th grade. This was a couple decades ago. It was one of those dreams you immediately wake from and can remember with fine detail. It was rather boring. I was in an unfamiliar living room with an unfamiliar family and it was Christmas time. There was a kind of short, fat Christmas tree decorated primarily with white ornaments and white lights. Exchanging gifts were myself, a dad and mom, 3 daughters, 2 high school age, 1 around preschool age, and 1 brother, middle school age. In the dream it was apparent that I was their guest and that one of the girls was my girlfriend. At the end of the dream the youngest daughter picked up a cup of hot chocolate and yelled, "Wake up and smell the freedom." What? LOL. And then I woke up. That was it. It was about 2 minutes worth of dream and I remembered everything. I can still remember the details 28 years later. 2 years later. The fall after I graduated high school I met and began long distance dating a girl that lived in Los Angeles. I lived in Washington state at the time, and I was invited to spend the holidays with her and her family. I spent the week prior to Christmas with them and the night before I was scheduled to fly back home we opened Christmas presents. When we were finished my girlfriend's youngest sister, who was 4 years old, picked up her cup of hot chocolate. turned to me and yelled, "Wake up and smell the freedom." I instantly remembered the dream I'd had 2 years earlier. It was that scene. Everything was the same. The situation, the room, the tree, the people, and that "wake up and smell the freedom." I still can't explain it. It wasn't similar. I dreamed that precise moment. Over the years I've occasionally gone down the Google rabbit hole about this type of dream event and how it could have happened. Still no idea. I'll probably never know, but it is without a doubt the weirdest thing that's ever happened to me, and it does make me question reality. Probably easily explainable but huge coincidence nonetheless. My paternal grandpa died out of nowhere 2 years ago in October. Every February my dad has his birthday at a local bar in a small town where most of my family lives. This particular birthday was the first ever that my grandpa was not there with us. Halfway through the party I notice a jacket identical to his thrown across a deep freezer by the door. Slowly people start noticing it and mentioning it to each other. So I asked the bartender, who happens to be my second cousin on my dad's side. Turns out the jacket appeared 3 days before the party. Nobody knew whose it was. Nobody came to pick it up, and it even had a pack of his cigarettes in the pocket. To this day we all believe that grandpa showed up for one last birthday party. TLDR. Grandpa died in October. Still showed up to dad's birthday party in February. Left his jacket. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.